Okay, good afternoon. My name is Captain Neil Watts, and I represent Culmen International. And what we're tasked with doing is raising an awareness that sanctions are an ever-present and ever-changing risk to the shipping industry. I'm not talking directly to the procurement of ships or to the various industries involved in the oil and gas, except in specific sanctions contexts. So I'll be covering that. I have a strange accent because I'm South African, and I will attempt to stay within my 15 minutes, well aware that there's a cocktail reception between me and you. Okay, so as I said earlier, there are ever-changing sanctions environment that you have to deal with when it comes to the shipping industry, and particularly in maritime financial services. Now, we've just seen how, with regards to Russia, how very quickly Russia became the most sanctioned country in the world. It was North Korea previously, and now it's Russia. So that means you have to adapt continuously. Of course, you have to determine for your own industry what are the sanctions risks that apply to you, number one, and number two, what are the obligations on you in terms of international law that you have to comply with. Then, of course, the kinds of risk that you deal with, we've found by experience that there's a tendency to underestimate risk in the maritime industry and to underestimate the effectiveness of illicit networks to move goods and services under the radar. And then, of course, how is this done? In order to respond effectively to these challenges and risks, you need to know basically, or have an awareness of how the deception occurs, how this illicit activity is managed and made operational. Okay, so in terms of sanctions mitigation, targeted financial sanctions, what industries are exposed? I mentioned a couple. We've even have instances of charterers having an issue where the one chartered vessel, the one hanging 11, simply absconded, and you'll probably find in that regard they had a North Korean crew on board, and that's how the vessel absconded, never to be seen again by the party that it was chartered from, and it's now constantly engaged. What you need to know is that typically sanctions evaders like older ships. The so-called dark fleet that operates and moves Russian and Iranian oil, they typically involve vessels that are older than 15 years. And in many cases, they like to procure what they call throwaway vessels, vessels that are on the point of being scrapped. And we've seen how many vessels have been scrapped. And so that is the market that they look at, a vessel that's on the point of being scrapped. And of course, there's money to be made if you sell to a party that wants an old ship that nobody else wants. Of course, maritime insurance companies are exposed in terms of insurance and reinsurance, particularly in the case of Russian oil, where you have to ensure that the oil carried by the vessel was procured under $60 a barrel. That is an oil cap. When it comes to North Korean sanctions with regards to oil, there is a national cap on North Korea, which is 500,000 barrels a year, which is difficult to determine, but it is nevertheless determined. But what has to happen is that you report the oil sold to North Korea, so it's not a complete ban, but it is a restriction, and you have to report on that. Plus, once the ban is exceeded, you may not deliver oil to North Korea, whether it's directly, indirectly, or via ship-to-ship transfers. Of course, ship brokers, it's also an issue for ship brokers because North Korea has been able to acquire at least 52 vessels that we know of since 2020. So they're able to get those vessels, at least 4 in the last 6 months, as reported by the UN panel of experts. Then, of course, it affects you if you are a shipyard, because typically when they buy an old vessel, they have a quick little refurbishment in a dockyard. In some cases, they've changed the look of the vessel physically, and in other cases, they've provided a complete new identity for the vessel, because many Chinese vessels that operate between Chinese ports, they don't have IMO numbers because they don't conduct international trade. So what they do is they apply for an IMO number once the vessel has been bought and modified, so you don't know where the vessel came from. And then, of course, financial institutions involved in the maritime trade and finance, and of course, joint ventures are completely banned when it comes to North Korea. Now, when it comes to banks, banks have to be concerned that in terms of conveyancing and paying for the purchase of the vessels, or paying for the repair of the vessels, or paying for the modification of the vessels, that their banks are not used for the transfer of these funds, because that's illegal in many jurisdictions, and in the US that would constitute wire fraud if you use US dollars. So the little square that you see on your right, those are the risks involved, where ships can be designated and companies can be designated. Your vessel could be forced to be deregistered if it's involved in sanctions. Of course, what could happen is that the insurance is cancelled and the ship's classification papers are also cancelled. But obviously there are tactics to avoid that as well, which I'll cover. Then, of course, these are recommendations from the UK Office of Sanctions Implementation. These are due diligence practices that they recommend. Obviously, it's not always possible to have a compliance division within your company, but you need to allocate somebody to do that particular compliance and due diligence. It's the old know your KYC, and of course your counterparty. Clearly in the supply chain, the more companies that are doing this, the more effective your due diligence will be. And then of course it's important to audit the information about the vessel's company. It's an age-old challenge, and that is determining who the beneficial owner is. But it's important once you've onboarded them that you check later, because ships change their companies. They change their identities and they change their flags. I know we have 2 flags present here, in the Marshall Islands. Thank you for sponsoring this event. And the Liberian Register. I've dealt with them in the past for these kinds of investigations, because I can assure you no country and no registry has not been touched by illegal shipping activities for the purposes of circumventing sanctions. And then of course I've also worked with commodity traders and other companies in terms of what contractual language are you using when it comes to termination of your services because of involvement in sanctions, because that is a requirement. So it's important to have that language in your contracts. For instance, if a ship is in a certain high-risk jurisdiction, have you asked the questions, why did your AIS system go off? Why did you not report your positions? Why were you stopped in one position for a long time, which is an indicator of ship transfers? So these questions need to be asked, and if you don't get a satisfactory answer, you should be in a position, because of the contract language, to be able to terminate the services. And then, of course, is there a visible commitment from your company to sanctions compliance? Can we see on a website where you refer to specific regulations, policies, or termination clauses? Now, with regards to sanctioned goods, I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but typically there are restrictions on exports to certain countries, such as technologies to Russia, or certain oil technologies to Iran, for instance, or certain weapons technologies or dual-use technologies to North Korea. And of course, what kinds of deception are taking place? What do you need to look after? It's typically the old front companies and shell companies tactic. The complicit companies that are making money out of sanctions, particularly with the oil price so high now, you'll find that they'll be able to exploit countries that require oil, like North Korea. And then, of course, transshipment, that's always a problem, and false documentation and certificates of origin. Now, countries like North Korea, they make most of their foreign revenue earnings from coal exports. And this is where your challenge is going to be. Typically, coal should be tested when it arrives at a port to be disembarked. And so you need to know what are the characteristics of North Korean coal, which is a very high-grade anthracite, but its characteristics are very unique. The tendency has been to either falsify documents so that it looks like the origin was Russia, or even in many cases they've mixed it with Russian coal, so even when you test it, it looks like it's actually Russian coal when it is not. And I can assure you many countries have been caught out in this regard. Indonesia, Japan, South Korea, many countries, Vietnam, Malaysia, with these illicit coal shipments. And of course, falsifying where it was loaded. So it's important for you to know through various tracking means, and that's when we recommend various kinds of software that can identify the vessel behavior. So then, of course, there's export to sanctioned jurisdictions. We've spoken about Russia and Iran exporting oil. Countries like North Korea, they require oil because their refineries are very poor. Most of the imports will not be oil, but marine oil, diesel, and other oil products such as aviation fuel. So these are the kinds of things that they're looking for. They use the same front companies and shell companies to get this done. And most importantly, your challenge is going to be, once again, ship-to-ship transfers. Are your vessels involved in these transfers? And we've had companies from Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, Indonesia involved in these particular illegal ship-to-ship transfers. And then it's important for you to know what going dark means. Dark is when a ship switches its AIS off intentionally. AIS was originally invented for the safety of ships at sea, but it's also being used for tracking. And so they don't worry about ship safety. They switch it off, and typically you'll find in a ship-to-ship transfer situation, one ship will keep its AIS on so that the other one can find it, and the other one's AIS will be off, so that you can't associate the two vessels coming together for a ship-to-ship transfer. Okay, so we've discussed most of these deceptive shipping practices. These are the 7 most deceptive practices. I've spoken about the AIS. It's important to also be aware of identity swapping. This is where they assume the identity of another ship, or alternatively, changing their identities on a rapid basis. We call this flag hopping, when they move or progress through a number of flag states very quickly, so to create degrees of separation of their old identity if this ship has been identified before for involvement in illicit activity. Now, I don't know if you're aware of it, you probably are, but on a political level, there's always blacklists being circulated, so this information isn't always available to the public. If you've been blacklisted for this particular activity, it's not just a case of ticking off a list of sanctioned or designated entities that you would get from a UN list, but these are blacklists that are generated on a political level and shared between embassies. I served on the UN panel of experts for North Korea for 5 years, and it was my job to investigate these types of cases. And obviously also complex ownership and management structures. That is all too confusing in terms of the origin of the ship or the origin of the controlling authority of the ship. Like in the case of North Korea, they have North Korean flag ships, North Korean controlled ships, and ships that act on North Koreans' behalf. All of those are used to conduct illicit activity. And then, of course, it's important to know the sailing patterns and behavior of the ship, whether it's the ship's past or the most recent voyage. And to do that, you need to have good tracking software. There are various free types of software and databases that you could use, like UN reports. I would recommend that you use the annexes of those reports because they contain the most information. You may not be aware that a UN report's limited to 20,000 words because it has to be translated into 6 other languages. This means a lot of the granular detail goes into the annexes of those particular reports. And in there, you'll find granular detail on ships, companies, and individuals that are involved in illicit activity and sanction circumvention. That you need to include in your database of who you deal with and your KYC. And then it's important to know in your particular industry, the HF codes of the types of goods that you're likely to transport. This is very important, and the UN reports will also give you specific HS codes of illicit goods. And then, of course, in terms of risk exposure, who you should inform. If you come across this kind of activity, you can help other industry players by sharing information, and information sharing plays a big part in securing the international supply chain. Then there are many institutions and publications such as RUSI, C4ADS, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, South China Post. They also produce very good articles on who the illicit actors are. And then, of course, the primary database that you use for your sources of reference is the IMO GISIS database. All you have to do is register with the email, and there you can see the little square. It tells you whether the ship has been sanctioned or not. It tells you whether the ship has been involved in illicit activity, and this is free. Okay, so I've spoken about open sources. There are many. You also have access to bespoke databases such as Windward, Polestar, marinetraffic.com that can provide you information. An additional free resource is the Memorandum of Understanding for this region, the Tokyo MOU. And in that particular database, you can see where ships have been, where they've had inspections, information on their companies, because that's part of the database, and it's a very useful free source of information as well for this particular region. So in conclusion, we have a booth at the Suntex Center as part of the Singapore Maritime Week. Please come around if you have any additional questions or inquiries, and it's our job to assist you in raising your awareness, to assist you in developing your knowledge and capabilities in ensuring sanctions compliance for your company. Thank you very much. You can scan the barcode here, which will give you additional information.